Hi and welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, a podcast that features classic Ozploitation and other weird, wonderful, overlooked and underappreciated Australian films from the 70s, 80s and beyond. My name is Pete and I'm your host.
Remember him when you look at the night sky.
Hi and welcome. Today I'm joined by Tab and Micah and we're discussing, funnily enough, Young Einstein from 1988, which is a bit of a departure for this podcast. How are you guys going?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
We're good. I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this movie, and I don't think either of us had seen this
No,
before,
I wasn't
so
familiar with it.
was
No.
Oh, you'd never
fun
seen
experience.
it? Wow. It's amazing. I hadn't seen it for a long time. I watched it, I shouldn't say a long time. I think I watched it last year or the year before, but then I was thinking more about the podcast and I was thinking, I need to change things up a little bit this year. And so I'm thinking what I'll do is maybe, and I had this suggestion from a guest I had on a previous, we're just chatting after we finished recording. And I said I was thinking of stretching things out a little bit, changing things a little bit and just maybe putting in a couple more movies that are kind of like a little better known than just like some of the Ozploitation stuff and that, which is good because they still get like a lot of listens, but just trying to broaden the scope a little bit. So his suggestion was, and I think it's a good one, was like maybe do a movie like Better Known Like This every 3 or 4 episodes and then do your other stuff in between. So I think I'll go with that. I'm still not sure. People keep saying you're going to do Crocodile Dundee and I'm not sure.
Oh, see, I was thinking
that might be going too far the other way.
Maybe a bit too obvious.
Yeah, it's too obvious, right?
I was thinking Muriel's Wedding because that was something I watched with my mom as a kid.
Yeah, well, that might be a good one to do as well, I guess. So just to kind of, I'm just thinking it might broaden the scope and the listenership a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see how this one goes because this is definitely an interesting film. So just a bit of a summary for the movie. Young Einstein is essentially a pretty quirky and unconventional film that reimagines the life of Albert Einstein as a hilarious and peculiar young man, just kind of pretty close to the real Albert Einstein.
That's true.
Yeah. The film was directed, co-written, and doing everything is Yahoo Serious. Also in this cast is it, how do you pronounce it? Odile Kleiser?
Yeah, I think it's Odile.
Odile, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. As Marie Curie and John Howard as the pompous Preston. Together, they help bring to life the film's blend of slapstick comedy, romance, and scientific discovery. Has a very catchy soundtrack featuring the likes of Icehouse, The Stems, and The Models. Young Einstein's a humorous and entertaining romp through history that is not to be missed. It's a pretty fun movie. And I was surprised watching it, like how much I enjoyed it. I was like, it's very Australian insofar as it could almost be described as like some sort of almost a Australian tourism ad in a way because it's got so many locations and things like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The production value on it is just like just point a camera and there's free production value. Like
it's
such beautiful landscapes.
It is. It's really good. It gets shown off very well. Amazing he did it all for $5 million, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, definitely amazing.
But this was 80, I think it was shot in 87 or something like that. So it makes some sense. So it was released in Australia on the 15th of December 1988 and then in the US about a year later in 1989, which I didn't think. I think movies were pretty different in those days. Yeah. Now I think you pretty much get simultaneous releases everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe a day or two, maybe a week, but this is almost a year. I guess they were waiting to see how it went. It was released at the tail end of the Australian bicentenary year, which was 1988, which marked 200 years since the first fleet of convict ships arrived in Australia in 1788. So it was a very big year in Australia for all things Australian. I still remember all sorts of things happening. I was down by the harbour on Australia Day that year, and it was pretty amazing. So it's a very Australian day. So it was interesting that it got released in the same year as that. Like I was saying, the budget was $5 million. It took in $24.9 million globally, which isn't too bad for that movie. Yahoo Serious first became interested in the idea of Albert Einstein, he was traveling the Amazon River and saw a local wearing a T-shirt with, the picture of Albert Einstein with his tongue sticking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he saw a local with that picture, and that's where he kind of got the idea. So, and then the screenplay was adapted from a previous script he'd written called The Great Galoot, which is a really interesting name for a movie. And he had co-written that with David Roach, and he's collaborated with Roach on pretty much all his movies, I think. So Young Einstein, Reckless Kelly, and is it Mr. Accident or something, the third one? Yeah,
Mr. Accident, yeah.
He was able to get funding from the Australian Film Commission and some private investment, and by March 1984, he'd filmed about an hour of the movie. He was then able to pre-sell the film for $2 million, which gave him the rest of the budget to complete the film. And when he saw the first version of the film, he didn't like it at all, apparently, but Graham Burke from Roadshow saw it and really liked it. So Roadshow bought Film Accord. I guess they bought their share out or whatever in 1987 in March, and got Warner Brothers to distribute the film outside of Australia and paid to redo parts of the film, which made it an hour longer. They also added new music, including some of the songs by Paul Kelly, Mental as Anything, etc. And this got the film to $5 million. Warner Brothers gave $4 million towards a new version of the film and spent $8 million in promoting it in the US. It's a lot of money to spend on promotion, especially in those days, you think.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I always find it interesting how much films kind of like spend on promotions, especially these days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I read a thing that said for big, what they consider blockbusters, they're willing to spend like half of the production cost.
Isn't it amazing?
Promoting it.
Yeah.
Still,
it's
or
amazing.
that's how it was back then?
No, still now.
Still.
They
Wow.
factor in, like, if it's something like a Marvel movie, for instance, they allot what would be half of the budget for promotion globally.
It's amazing when you think some of these movies cost like $300 million.
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
It's just like, Jesus. Oh, well, it's big business.
So saying that the Paul Kelly and the Mental as Anything songs were added, Mental as Anything does rock and roll music, right? So that whole rock and roll music ending was added? That wasn't the original ending?
That ending was added, apparently, yeah.
Interesting.
But I also think they probably didn't have a lot of money for music licensing. So I'd say probably most of the music that made into the film was probably, covered under that. So it has got some great music in it, which we'll talk about.
The Paul Kelly song's amazing.
Yeah, Dumb Things is great. We play that in the cover band I'm in. It's a great band.
Really?
It's a great
Oh,
song.
that's awesome.
Yeah, people dig it. It's a great song, yeah.
We watched an interview. I think it was made for his American promotion of the film, but they kind of talked about how in Australia it was a really big deal. Like, it had outsold a lot of popular movies from America and other countries.
It was a massive
when it was released.
film. It was a massive film. I think at the time it was the 5th biggest opening of a film in Australia.
Wow.
When it came out. So it was really, really, really big for the time. So I'm assuming that's probably been done over by now. But definitely at the time it was, I remember, once again, this is another film I'm probably guilty of not seeing at the movies, probably because 1988, I just don't think I was going to the movies that often. How old was I? 62, 72, 82. So I was 26. I was probably doing all sorts of stuff then, but wasn't going to a lot of movies. But
Life gets in the way.
It does a bit. Yeah. But I do remember seeing it like on video, etc. So yeah, it was really big and it was everywhere. I definitely remember like how big it was. So yeah, it didn't go very well in the US though.
I don't think we were ready for it just because we're so, anything that's outside of our sense of humor or our style in general tends to be sort of rejected until much later.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I was watching a Siskel and Ebert review of the film and they both didn't like it very much at all.
Of course not.
Yeah. So I just don't think they got the
Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah, I just don't think they got the humor. So
yeah,
maybe in those days, was this kind of around the beginning of, I'll say it seems a bit corny, the US love affair with Australia, 88? Was this around then?
When was Crocodile Dundee?
I was just about to say, when was Crocodile Dundee?
I think that was a couple years before, so this may have been like right in the middle of that.
Right
or
in
towards
the middle,
tail end.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Because that's really when you start seeing, like, Muriel's Wedding ended up being a really big movie over here.
Yep.
And, Mad Max was a big deal here. And There were a couple of other Australian films, like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, in certain circles was like a big deal. So I think there were a bunch of Australian movies that we were kind of like, hey, this is really fun.
A lot of music from there was kind of popular.
Yeah, a lot of music as well. Yeah.
In Excess, that's like the height of In Excess popularity.
It was. Yeah, it was the whole period, right? That end, mid-'80s. I think Dundee, I just looked it up, Crocodile Dundee was 86.
Okay.
And Muriel's,
so about
Muriel's
a year
Wedding
before.
was 94. Yeah. So we're definitely in the Australian sort of period of all that sort of stuff suddenly, being, I think it was more that Australian kind of pop culture being sort of, more popular around the world, especially in the US.
Was Yahoo Serious known over here, or what was he kind of known for at the time? Because I wasn't familiar with him. I had heard his name here and there, but I wasn't really familiar with anything that he did. What was he kind of known for?
He just came out of the blue with this movie.
Oh,
really?
Okay.
So,
I think he'd done like a couple of shorts or something like that. Like he went to an art school. He was expelled from the art school for some graffiti on the outside walls of the art school, which is a bit odd that you get banned from an art school for doing art. But anyway, what the hell? And then he got into film that way. But he hadn't really done much. I think he pretty much came out of the blue. And then it's really interesting because he came out of the blue with this movie. Then he made Reckless Kelly and Mr. Accident or whatever it was in 2000, Mr. Accident was. And then he just faded away.
Yeah.
And he's not very well, no one really knows what's happened, where he is, what he's doing. He keeps himself very private.
mm-hmm.
He apparently had another film he's made, but he's not releasing it because he's one of the co-stars in this movie he was married to, and they had a divorce and she was trying to get as much out of him as possible. So it's kind of like, well, these films aren't going to get released while there's a chance that you're going to take everything from them. So
wow.
Interesting.
this is what I heard and read. So that's all internet stuff though. But yeah, so he's a bit of a recluse. Sometimes you'll see a story pop up quite weirdly in the Sydney Morning Herald or something like that, like Yahoo Serious spotted at or something. It's really kind of strange. But I'm not really sure where he kind of lives. And I'm assuming that the people that live around him probably keep him private that way as well. They probably don't hassle him too much and whatnot. So he was born in Newcastle, so he might be living there still maybe.
We came across a Q&A that he did from 2019 that was it was for a screening of this movie, and he did a Q&A beforehand, and that's like the most recent thing I think anybody had seen. So.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't get time to watch it. I was going to watch it this morning. I ran out of time.
It's really good. He seems like a nice guy.
Interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently he's lovely.
Yeah, he's just very reserved and sort of very much in his head, I think.
Yeah.
Because he would answer the question, and it was clear that he was really like doing some searching
in his mind. Yeah. But, yeah, so, I guess if he wants to be a recluse, that's his choice, and if that's what he wants. It's interesting, a few things about him. He was a founding member of the Kokoda Track Foundation, and that foundation's like an international aid organization, and they work in Papua New Guinea, and it was established in 2003, and it supports the indigenous people of Papua New Guinea, and it provides health and community service programs such as disaster relief, micro-business promotion, and sustainable ecotourism. If you have a look at Yahoo Serious has a website. I didn't get it up at the moment. Have you seen it? He actually has a website. Looked like it was made like in the 1990s.
Oh yeah.
But it's really quite interesting, and you can actually learn a bit about him there. But he's very much big on like indigenous, sort of people and that sort of thing. It's a weird website. It's yahooserious.com. I don't know if you can get it up.
I'm looking at it now, and it's
taking
very
me back.
nice.
Yeah, it's like it's got flashing,
It looks like a site I would have made in high school.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, yeah. And he's got weird things on like do not click here and then it says 10 seconds to your hard drives are raised, and of course that doesn't happen. And
that's funny.
Yeah, it's very quite strange. But he's obviously a very eccentric individual.
Yes.
And, but also quite artistic. So it's it's good. So what are your initial thoughts on the film?
Well, I wasn't really familiar with him, this movie, or any of his work going into it, so I didn't really know what to expect. Tab has this in her notes, but just seeing the poster, I was like, oh, maybe this is like an Australian, like Pauly Shore kind of type movie or whatever. It was actually much more than that. It was delightful. It was so weird and quirky and fun. And there is the bit to minute ratio in this movie. The comedy bit to minute ratio is insane. And every time you watch it, there's like new bits that kind of pop up. And it's just, I had so much fun watching it.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you did. Yeah, it's good. It's always interesting when you watch a movie for the first time and you don't really know what to expect. And then you have that sort of thing. Yeah.
I was telling Tab before I watched it before she did. And I was like, it's like he picked the perfect movie for the two of us. Because it's got like, it's very science heavy in the references and stuff, but then there's also like rock music and great needle drops, and it's just like a perfect mashup of the two of us. So nice job on that.
Yeah.
It was pretty obvious when I was thinking about who to do it with. I was actually thinking about you guys. So yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I knew you'd get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Micah had brought up Pauly Shore, and then when I watched it, I was like, it's also kind of like Pee Wee Herman a little bit. He's got like a childlike quality, the same way that Pee Wee Herman does. And I guess Pauly Shore has that too, but this movie is a lot smarter than a Pauly Shore movie.
It's a smarter Pauly Shore.
Pee Wee Herman.
It's interesting. It's got some interesting themes, and but it is very lighthearted.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun sight gags.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I noticed that I was so tickled by is I think that there's a spoof of Man from Snowy River. He's riding a horse, and it's like almost a vertical shot of him riding a horse down a hill.
I'd say so.
And Man from Snowy River was a movie that I watched a lot with my parents as a kid. So I was like, hey.
There you go. Yeah.
And then when he's going to the hotel is at the end of Lonely Street, which is...
Yeah, she had to point that out. I missed that.
Hotel.
Oh, you missed that?
Yeah, it's crazy. That's the thing, is like the bit per minute ratio is insane. Like I couldn't keep up with all of it.
I was thinking at least they didn't name the hotel Heartbreak Hotel. It would have been overly obvious. So I think it's good they did what they did.
Yeah.
The hotel stuff's really interesting with there's always these shots of these women that live in the hotel. I'm not sure what their profession is, but I got a fair idea. But they're always asking him these really deep science questions by the end of it.
It's like a turn on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny.
And even the guy that runs the hotel is like asking, but you know, if light moves at a speed faster than we can, then what about this? You know?
Yeah.
Like they've been debating it while he's been gone. That's all they're talking about there.
Yeah, and then they want him to. Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's I like that. For me, it's just another rewatch, right? But I hadn't seen it for a while, and I just really enjoyed watching it. It was just a fun thing to watch. I ended up watching it I actually bought it on Apple TV or on Apple, whatever it's called, Apple Movies, because it's not available streaming anywhere in Australia that I could see. So the only place you seem to be able to get it is in like paid sites. So I guess I could have cheated and VPN'd into, where did you guys watch it?
Prime.
Oh, we ended up renting
it
from Amazon.
Oh, you rented on Prime. So it's not really available to stream anywhere. So some funny licensing issues. It's a movie I'd like to see, like somebody, I'm looking at you, Umbrella Entertainment, to release and do a really nice Blu-ray release of it, because it's got some great, like you were alluding to before, some of the nature shots are fantastic.
Oh, yeah. In 4K or Blu-ray, that would look gorgeous.
Yeah, it would look gorgeous, especially if it was remastered and everything like that. And especially if they could drag him out for a commentary or an interview or something, like current day sort of stuff. And it'd be a really good release. So
he'd probably be willing to do it, because at that screening, he seems really excited to be there and excited to know people love the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it'd be really good. So that's just another one on my list that I want Umbrella to do. The other one is Starstruck.
Yes.
So
I love that movie.
That's all right. But I got Houseboat Horror from them last week, so that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So, which I'll definitely do an episode on that movie. It's crazy.
I was talking to Jacob today.
Oh, wow.
Former co-host of Test Pattern. And he loves this movie. This was a childhood favorite of his. And when I told him we were doing it, he was like, oh my gosh.
I should have got him on as well. Wish I'd known. Yeah. We could have 4 people.
Well, and it's funny because Chris is also a big fan of Yahoo Serious. Apparently, he liked watching his movies as a kid, and I think for a short period of time, Yahoo Serious was on MTV as
he was
had like his own little show. And
I saw that this morning. I saw a clip this morning from that, and it was some guy he had on, obviously some actor or something, or playing a strong man.
Yeah,
and, that's the clip we saw.
You saw the same clip.
He's lifting his own weight.
Lift his own body weight.
Yeah.
It was really dumb. But anyway, I mean, it's a very, like that, the movie is really flippant in that way. It's not really it's a really fun movie. It's got a couple of messages in there, kind of, which is sort of half serious, the whole Charles Darwin bit. I think there's the bit near the end where Preston's up near Charles Darwin and saying something about, can you save us or something, and there's this big thing about it's an atomic bomb, you can't run away. Kind of deep. And also, I guess at that time, like we're talking, mid-80s, mid-late 80s, that sort of thing was pretty topical as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was like right as the Cold War was sort of easing off. So probably like a decade or a couple of decades spent, worrying about Russia nuking us or a nuclear war breaking out between us and Russia for people that were living not in America or Russia. Yeah.
So it was pretty topical that way. I think it was interesting. One of the things I was thinking about when I was watching the movie that I want to discuss as well is some of the parallels between Young Einstein and Albert Einstein. It's very interesting the way it's sort of done that, but he's obviously, and I think this is the Siskel and Ebert thing, was they thought it was really dumb that it was all about splitting beer atoms. And I'm like, well, it's an Australian movie. Of course it's going to be splitting beer atoms.
Yeah.
Because it's...
Yeah, Einstein also didn't grow up on an apple farm in Tasmania.
No, exactly.
What are we talking about here?
He also didn't invent the surfboard or rock and roll.
Yeah, or rock and roll. But there's kind of these funny things like that. The scene where he sort of watches the girls do the what do they call that? I don't know what they call it. Is it like a jumping jacks thing or something where they've got the squares on the ground?
Hopscotch is what we call it.
The hopscotch. That's it. That's it. I forgot. I haven't had a young daughter for years.
4/4.
Yeah. Apparently, I don't know how he got into 6/8 and all those other tempos, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah,
time signatures. But yeah, that's a really interesting scene. And the other thing I think is funny, I know I'm going all over the place, but that's fine. We just
kind of how this movie works, sort of.
It is kind of how this movie works. Yeah. There's almost every second scene you see him in begins or ends with him eating an apple.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
He's always got an
That's
apple.
Like his,
he'll take a bite and then just throws it over his shoulder.
It's sort of like his spinach, kind of, his Popeye.
Yeah.
He needs it to think.
Yeah. It's pretty, it's good. And the beer atoms thing's funny because he grows up on this farm and his father's got a still and tries to, can't get a good head on the beer. And his father says, if someone can add bubbles, then it'd be perfect. So he starts thinking about it, blows up the still.
Yeah.
And it's quite good.
I love that he's sort of he thinks that he discovered gravity, but then his mom is like, oh yeah, what goes up must come down. Like Isaac Newton came up with that. So they kind of they don't give him credit for that, but he thought that he had that idea.
Yeah. It's quite funny. Then there's, the whole thing about, then there was when he leaves home, probably one of my favorite scenes, and it sounds like I'm just being very jingoistic, I guess, but just the fact that whole scene with Great Southern Land playing over the top of him traveling is just really, there's some amazing nature shots in there, and
absolutely,
it's just really good.
Tab made a point whenever we were watching it that when they're standing out and the dad is asking him to put bubbles in beer or whatever, and they're looking out over that valley. Or no, he's asking him to dam the valley. That's what it is. Yeah, but she was like, right. Imagine you walk into your backyard and that's what you have to look at. And I was like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's quite nice.
Well, we brought up the fact that we thought about it's kind of like Pauly Shore, except for when you watch a Pauly Shore movie, it's just America, so it doesn't look beautiful.
Doesn't have the same outlook.
It's just like a stupid movie.
Yeah, the closest you get is Son-in-Law.
Yeah,
right.
You just see farm if you're lucky. This movie is a wacky comedy movie that then also has some of the most beautiful backdrops I've ever seen. Yeah.
But what's really interesting, I had a look where it was filmed. None of it's filmed in Tasmania.
Oh, well, yeah.
I think the shot where he was talking to his father about damming and they're looking out, I think that's the Blue Mountains up in, well, it's only about an hour and a half from where I live now, but a lot of the other scenes are in Sydney and in Newcastle and things like that. So, yeah, I was looking at because I thought, maybe surely some of this is filmed in Tasmania. I was like, no. So,
wow.
So, very interesting. But, the locations are great. That scene's really fantastic. And any scenes you guys liked in particular?
Mine kind of ended up being the little small bits more than like whole scenes. Like I love, for some reason, I kept cracking up at when he's going to college and there's the sheep herder that's like taking in all the sheep or whatever. And then like to learn how to be a sheep herder. And then there's like a throwaway gag where he's dragging one out and he's like, you failed. And he's like, dragging it out the door. That cracked me up. The break glass in case of, but they break it with an axe to get another axe.
That looks identical.
That looks identical. It's the same axe. That cracked me up. It's bold, but the kitten pie bit was funny to me. And like that, just knowing that it's going to drive audiences crazy and then having the reveal that they're okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Like,
the guy cooking those cats is Roger Ward, who was in Mad Max and a lot of those and Turkey Shoot and quite a few sort of movies. Yeah.
Interesting.
Is he the police chief in Mad Max?
Yes.
I knew he looked familiar.
Yeah.
We actually just watched all the Mad Max movies a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Those little gags were some of the best parts for me. Really, the through line of the romance really worked for me. I found them really sweet. It's obviously completely fictionalized, but of course. I liked her performance a lot, and I found them really sweet together.
And that scene with them on the beach and that fantastic fucking STEM song at first sight is just amazing. Like the music in this, it's interesting. Like the songs they pick for this are just perfect for the scenes they're in. So it's really good.
I'm definitely going to track down the soundtrack.
Well, you can try and find it. I used to have it on cassette years ago.
Oh, wow. Is it kind of rare?
Well, it's not on Spotify. The songs, like these songs are on Spotify.
Yeah, people have made playlists that are like named whatever it is. But I'd like to track down like a CD of it or something.
I'm sure I'm sure you could go on eBay and find something. So, it would definitely be out of print. So I don't know what sort of money they'd be asking for it, but I doubt it'd be a lot. I don't know.
And it'd be worth it. I don't know how big
it would be. I'm thinking the same thing. I'd be interested to see what the price is, because that gives you an idea about what sort of cult standing the movie has, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because if it's not going to be that expensive, it's not going to be it's not a big audience for it. But if it's really expensive, then it's obviously an audience for it. Discogs might be another good place to look for CDs and maybe even a vinyl for this. So, yeah.
Yeah, Micah was able to find the record for Stardust. So
yes, you did.
Or Starstruck.
Yeah, and
so anything is possible.
Promo only version of it too.
Oh, really?
Weirdly, yeah.
Have you played it yet?
I have, like a couple times. Yeah, it sounds.
Is
great.
it good?
Oh yeah,
sounds great.
Yeah.
I was going to try and pick one up for myself. God, I love that movie. I don't know why. Anyway,
it's so much fun.
It is. Well, it's a bit like this one, isn't it? Right? There's nothing like. There's no real mass. Well, there's high stakes to a degree in this one, and but nothing really, downer or it's all fun.
And it's a different kind of like absurdity than, say, like English humor, which is similar in the absurd, but like it's just a different kind that speaks to me more, weirdly.
Yeah. There's a more of a lighthearted feel to it than British humor, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's got that. It's very Australian.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah. How about you, Tab? Do you have any scenes, or are you like Micah, where you just like vignettes?
I mean, I really loved the ending where he's playing the concert for everybody, is playing rock and roll music, and there's the girls screaming. Yeah. And then his it's Mary Curie. Mary Curie is sort of like looking at the girls screaming and just sort of baffled by that, but you can also see that she really likes him, and it's just very sweet.
Yeah. And I do like the scene when he goes to Marie Curie's place, and her father's there, and he climbs in the window, and he comes up and he basically commandeers, I just noticed you've got a hot air balloon. we're gonna take this hot air balloon and go. And it's just really funny how they just do that. And
we also really love the part where he's talking to the sex worker about what he's doing, and she's like, "I'm really tired. I'm going to go to bed." And he's like, "Okay, night."
Yeah.
And he's like,
There's that beat and just night. And that's
Very
his
naive.
partner, I think, at the time, right? That's
Yeah,
his.
at the
I think it is, yeah.
Eventual wife.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, very, very sort of. And then his mother, played by Sue Cruikshank, I think it is always asking father for a bit of fun on the side.
Yeah.
He keeps sort of waving her off, sort of thing, which is a bit sad. But anyway,
It's a fun twist of the roles, though.
there is
Because the
yeah.
joke would have normally been like her not wanting to or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. As far as parts of the movie that haven't dated well, and I usually bring this up a lot in movies we do here because they're older, is I guess the Asylum piece, although it's funny, there's a few bits there that obviously you wouldn't see in movies today.
Yeah.
But I kind of find it was still an interesting scene. I thought it was interesting that they seemed to, the people he was with were all obviously scientists or something. And for whatever reason, maybe it was that the time they were all locked away in an insane asylum.
And the mad
stuff like
scientist
that.
ward.
The mad scientist.
I like the atmosphere of that whole place. It had a very eerie, like it kind of gets sort of horror in that moment a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit spooky, but yeah, it's good. I think that was shot up in Newcastle. There's like a place up there that sort of has those sort of buildings in it and stuff like that. I could be wrong, but I think that was shot up there. So, yeah, interesting scene.
I loved his whole
That's
process
nice.
of like electrifying the violin, and then by the end of it, he's kind of
Oh,
built
yeah.
a guitar, and I really wanted to like get a good shot of it and pause it so I could look at all the stuff going on with his guitar. Like really creative, and I've been kind of on a Led Zeppelin kick lately. So the
Right.
bow, the electrified bow, and all of that just immediately made me think Jimmy Page, and I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool. So
And the shot at the beginning, the bit at the beginning of the movie where he's playing the violin in the bath, but he's actually washing up dishes,
yeah.
and he plays the riff from Satisfaction on his.
Yeah.
That's what that was. I was trying to place what that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
I just thought it was odd that he was in the bath and then he's washing up at the same. It was a bit gross, but I guess that's a joke in itself.
Doesn't his dad say something of like, I think we need to get a bigger bucket or something like that? Like his dad has some sort of
something like
comment
that.
of like, I don't think he fits in that.
Yeah, his dad's played by Pee Wee Wilson. Pee Wee Wilson was in a band called the Deltones, I think, in Australia. They're like a retro sort of 60s, well, I think they're around the 60s as well, 60s, 70s sort of band. Yeah, so that's where so some interesting people in this movie. Sue Cruikshank is also in quite a few movies as well, and she's quite funny in this as well. That's his mother, Mrs. Einstein, it says in here. But she's been in quite a few movies as well. She's a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows as well. So, yeah, the guitar thing's great. I was thinking when you were talking about that, I was like, I wonder what happened to all those props.
Yeah.
It's
I'd
like,
love
I
to.
wonder-
I mean, I'm sure it'd be outrageously priced to find one of them, but they probably made duplicates, I'm sure. So,
I'm sure, yeah.
Somebody
'Cause
has to
they basically
have
almost
'em.
destroyed one.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
bet he still has them.
Yeah.
He probably does somewhere. They're probably just sitting in a cupboard somewhere.
And I
or
wonder if
something
they
like that,
played, like if they actually made a sound. Like the violin maybe would be more likely than the guitar because the guitar was
Maybe.
sort of
Yeah.
odd shaped, but
And that whole scene, that awards scene, what awards was
The
it?
Science
Was it
Academy
Nobel?
Awards.
Oh, it was a Science Academy
I think it was a
Award.
made up
Yeah.
kind of thing, but yeah.
I think so too, yeah. It was quite funny. That was all in this shot in it looked like the State Theatre in Sydney, which is a beautiful old theatre in Sydney. It's where I first saw Jaws when it was released. And I saw it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What
That's
a place
an
to see it.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a few years ago, they did a special screening of Jaws again at the State Theatre. So I went to that as well.
That's
So
awesome.
Yeah.
it's a beautiful theatre. If you're ever in Sydney, it's definitely worth having a look. You can do tours of it as well. It's very old, but it's right in the middle of Sydney around all these bustling new buildings and shopping malls and stuff like that. But it's a great place. They do lots of stage stuff there these days. So mostly, like comedy shows or plays and musicals and stuff like that. But it's not a really big theatre, but it's really great for that sort of thing. The front of the theatre is so ornate. Well, you can see it in that. So it's very ornate and definitely a good place to be.
Sounds kind of like where Tab and I saw Goblin play the score to
Oh, yeah, the
Suspiria, where
Orpheum.
they kind of had a
Yeah.
screen, but it was made for bands to play also and stuff.
Yeah. That would have been great.
Yep.
When did you see that?
Back in October.
Yeah, it was like right before Halloween.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
It was.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was really fun. And they did like a little they played the score with the movie, and then they did like a little concert afterwards.
Yeah, and the audience was
their
like
original stuff.
seated for the movie and everything, and then as they started playing normal stuff, they sort of filtered up, and then it turned into a rock show, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
That would be
really
great to
fun.
see. It's like I would love to see John Carpenter because he does a lot of shows.
Oh yeah, he
as
plays
well.
with his son.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool too. But I live too far away. So I have been eyeing off whether I can afford to make Halloween Horror Nights this year, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see. I'd like to. It's been a few years since I've been.
Yeah,
so.
the pandemic kind of killed that for you for a
Killed
little
that.
bit.
I did I think almost a 5-year streak going to that.
Wow.
And it mostly worked out because of where I was working at the time. They always had our yearly get together in October. So I just stay a bit longer and go to Horror Nights. But anyway, it's all good. What else? Anyone got other stuff they want to
I was going to say that I know that it's not historically accurate, but all of the science is accurate, right? Like all of the theories, formulas, all of that stuff is correct, right?
Yeah, I mean they are talking about real science.
Yeah.
That's cool that it works sort of like an educational film in that way. It's absurd, but
Little
also
bit.
educational. If you remember those lines, you know that theory now.
Yeah, and they sort of explain it in layman's terms. It really reminded me of this book that my dad got for me when I was young. It was called The Time and Space of Uncle Albert, and it's written for like middle school kids
Okay.
by a particle physicist. And he basically tells the story about Albert Einstein sending his fictional niece into space to prove the theory of relativity, but it teaches kids the theory of relativity in a very understandable and fun way. And apparently it's become a series. I only ever read the first one. I don't think the second book had been published when I was younger. I would say you can read it as an adult too, because it's really fun. But if you want to understand the theory of relativity and you want to do it not in a very technical sense, that's a great way to do it.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that was great. I think it's funny when they were calling so many people what was it, E equal MC squared?
Yeah.
And they're all EMP.
Imp.
Yeah.
What does imp mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting. Like the parallels are interesting. Like Albert Einstein and Young Einstein. They, in the movie, I guess the parallels are they're both known for like their unconventional thinking and their willingness to like challenge scientific theories and such.
Well, and Albert Einstein was known for having a really sort of off-the-wall sense of humor and didn't take himself too seriously. He was one of the first people, people always talk about Steve Jobs, like wearing the same thing every day so that they don't have to like pick out an outfit. Albert Einstein was one of the first notable people to do that because he was like, I have better things to do than pick out an outfit. I'm just going to wear the same thing every day.
Yeah, it's one less thing to think about.
Right. And his hair was also like that because he was like, am I going to spend time combing my hair or am I going to work on this formula? So he didn't like really brush his hair that often because he saw it as a waste of time.
So do you think that was the thinking behind the hair in the movie as well?
Oh, yeah. I think so.
I think so too. It also seems like that's how he was wearing his hair at the time because when we saw the interviews, that's how he wore it. And in the interview we saw, he said, oh, it's been blue, it's been green, but it always kind of looks like this. And then it seems like when he gets to Reckless Kelly, he's not doing his hair that way anymore. It just looks sort of like long surfer hair at that point.
Yeah. I do like whenever he's working for the patent office and he has it like gelled kind of into this like kind of flock of seagulls looking thing, but bigger. Like it's like that's his fancy version.
Yeah.
The scene at the start where he's cutting his hair as well.
Yeah.
With the bucket on his head and he pulls it off and just
balloons out.
It's great. And it balloons out. Yeah. A bit like Sideshow Bob as well.
I was thinking of like Carrot Top.
That too.
Yeah, Sideshow Bob. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Maybe they all stole it from Yahoo Serious.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I could definitely see Carrot Top maybe doing that.
Yeah, a less jacked Carrot Top.
Yeah, at the time.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's cool. I've talked about the music a bit. The actual soundtrack itself, besides the songs that are in there, is pretty good. I kind of enjoyed that.
Yahoo Serious did that also. He did the score.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good that way. the songs, like, I just really, insofar as music in Australia at that period of time, I don't think you could have picked a better sort of more eclectic list. Like you've got, you got your big hits like Great Southern Land is probably the biggest one in there that people know. But there's like that Great Big Pig song called Hungry Town, which is a fantastic song.
Yeah.
I remember that one. The Models, which is, I don't know how many of these bands you guys know, but bands like The Models are fantastic, really great band. And then The Saints. Music goes around my head. I think the original version was from the Easy Beats, maybe. Some of my musical friends will pick me up on that. And then there's that, I still love it, that Stems song At First Sight. It's one of my favourite songs.
Yeah.
And there's this great Lime Spiders song called Weirdo Libido. Do you remember that from the movie? It's like, I think it's when they're in the asylum.
Yeah, that one's a lot of fun.
And it's they're a great band as well. They have I suppose at this time it's a rather not very PC name for a song, but they had a great single called Slave Girl back in like the early 80s. But just a great song. They're like, that's like the song in the movie. They're very grungy and sort of hard sort of rock, really good band.
It had a lot of like
just recent
alternative vibes to the soundtrack, and they're songs that probably wouldn't have been on an American soundtrack. The equivalent, like the US equivalent, wouldn't have been. It would be like REM being on a soundtrack in '86 or something like that. It wouldn't have been time yet.
Yeah, it's a bit edgy.
Yeah.
It's really good. Yeah, and the songs are really great, and they fit. Like I said before, they fit really well. So it's really good.
A lot of Australian music, especially what was popular there and didn't come over here, it's kind of a blind spot for me. So these movies are great for me to like learn about a bunch of bands that just never filtered over. We got like some things, like AC/DC is one of my favorite bands, and they're, I associate them with Australia, but a lot of stuff just didn't make it to me. So this is a lot AC/DC.
Yeah, you got all the big stuff.
Yeah.
We got
you got all the big stuff.
AC/DC. Those were like the two big ones.
AC/DC, they're probably the biggest ones, right?
Right.
And once you start kind of looking in a bit further, Micah, you'll find that there's a lot, especially if you start with bands like the Stems and the Lime Spiders and the Models.
Totally.
They're really probably, the Models just great insofar as songs that they've released. And they started out like, I can't remember the first single they had, but they're just a great band. They had so many great songs. It's really worth it.
I think I'm going to do a deep dive on all of them.
Yeah, really worth it. Really good.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed about Australian music and movies, and really TV shows too, is that I don't know if it's because you guys are so far away from everything else, but it's very unique when we look at it. It's not like anything that comes from here or other English speaking countries. It's really specific to Australia, and you can kind of tell with the music and the movies, like, oh yeah, this is definitely an Australian band. And there's just a sense of like something really cool or really different about the music and the movies that come from Australia and New Zealand.
Very much so. For sure. Really interestingly, and this is pulling back the curtain a little bit, what I do sometimes to help me with figuring out synopsises and how I'm going to write and all that, I get a bit lazy. So I chucked it into ChatGPT to say, write me a 2-paragraph introduction to Young Einstein. And it actually got everything right, except it said hit songs by In Excess.
Oh, no.
That's funny.
So it probably guessed. Funny. It probably was like, it's an Australian movie from this time. It
Australian
probably has an Excess song.
Yeah. I'm probably going to be lambasted by other podcasters for using ChatGPT, but I'm sure more people use it than they say. So it's helpful for stuff like that when you just want to write something quickly, but you don't want to sit there and think about it, because you've still got I think now we're going a bit off topic, but I think with tools like ChatGPT, you've still got to be careful how you use it, because if you just go, do this, and you just say that's going to be right, then I might not have looked at it properly and put up, great songs by In Excess. Now, I knew that wasn't the case with this movie, but you've still got to sort of sanity check these things because it's not perfect. So,
well, and that is the perfect way to use it, because you're asking it for factual information that otherwise you would just have to like basically paraphrase from Wikipedia or whatever.
Yeah.
So how is that even really any different?
That's it. And when I copy it into the doc and I start playing with it, I often rewrite half of it anyway or move things around. So for me, it's just like a starting off point. So so it's good. I don't know if you've ever tried using it, but it's actually quite handy for some of that stuff.
Yeah, I haven't tried using it for that, but I might.
It's very interesting. It's
giving us some ideas.
So, yeah, there you go. You can even write like whole blog posts with it.
Oh,
it's
wow.
quite amazing. Yeah. So it's it's good. All right. Any final thoughts?
I would just encourage anybody who hasn't seen it to check it out. I'm really wanting to watch Reckless Kelly because I know that it's sort of a modernized version of Ned Kelly's story, which could be really fun. So I kind of want to check that out. And I would say any movie that's on this podcast, especially for American people, like unless it's a more well-known movie, definitely check it out for something that you're not going to see anywhere else. But this would be included in that.
Absolutely.
Micah?
I'm thoroughly impressed with every movie you've recommended to me so far. Like I will be this will be added to my like regular watching, and I'll listen to the soundtrack often. I think it's so much fun. I underestimated it by thinking of like the Pauly Shore comparison. I was like, oh, this might be a fun slapsticky comedy, and it actually has a lot more going on than just that. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Everybody should check it out.
Okay, excellent. You might not trust me once I get to Houseboat Horror because it's a VOD release, and Umbrella are releasing it, and it was really like it's not coming out till I think May, June, something like that. But I pre-ordered as soon as they brought it. I was like, "No, I'm getting the special edition."
The title kind of has me. I gotta say,
it's basically this pop group that goes away and goes on a houseboat for a weekend, and there's this like crazed killer. It's basically a slasher.
I'm in,
but it's just direct to video, and the acting is fucking awful. I remember seeing it years ago because I think one of the only places you can get it up till now is probably either illegally, like on Pirate Bay or something like that, or probably a crappy version on YouTube, maybe somewhere.
Some VHS rip that somebody made.
Yeah, well, yeah, I used to own the VHS. I wish I'd kept it because once this comes out, the VHS will probably increase in price. And not that I buy things for that, but I wish I'd kept it just for the fact of keeping it. But you never know at the time.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to be. It's pretty valuable.
Exactly. But yeah, so they're doing the whole thing. They've somehow they've got this VOD and they've upscaled it to 1080p or something, and they've got all these extras. And I'm thinking, how can you have all these extras for a movie that is like nobody knows about and is really a dodgy movie? It's quite funny. So
that's where
I can't resist.
Shudder did a special edition of Rocktober Blood or something.
I think there is like a fancy Blu-ray of that has come out.
Oh, really?
Never underestimate Severin or Vinegar Syndrome. They will scrape the barrel and treat it like it's Lawrence of Arabia as far as special features.
I think Umbrella just started a partnership recently with Vinegar Syndrome.
Oh, perfect.
So you can buy their stuff straight off the Vinegar Syndrome site, stuff like that. So, but they've got some great releases. I'm still waiting for my Weird Al movie to come. You know, the recent one with Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't seen
So
that.
they've got the one I ordered from Umbrella has the blue because somehow they ended up with distribution rights here and everywhere. And this set they put out, which I paid too much money for, has like the Blu-ray, has all this stuff. It has like a full-size shirt, like a shirt, like a Weird Al sort of shirt that comes with it and everything.
That's awesome.
I think I paid $125 or something stupid.
I've done the same for like package deals like that, so I totally get it.
I did the same with them. They released the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey thing.
Yeah.
Which I've never seen, is apparently really shit. But it's just the way the packaging looks, and it was like $75 or $80. I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
But
I've heard it's really gory, and that is always the movie can be garbage. If the effects look cool, it'll win me over.
Yeah, it'll win you over.
Yeah.
The other one I bought at the same time as those two was an Australian movie called The Tunnel that was made years ago. It was all about underground tunnels I think in Sydney it's set. And it's like a horror movie sort of thing. That looks pretty cool as well. So, yeah. Anyway, back to my final thoughts. I just think this is a really fun movie. I just think it's fun to watch. The The scenery is fantastic. The acting's pretty good in most. I don't think there's any really bad acting in this movie.
No.
Do you?
No. I think Yahoo Serious and the woman that plays Marie Curie are both really lovely and endearing and sweet.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. If you can nail those two characters, everybody else can be a little iffy, but I think everybody is great.
Yeah.
The actor playing Preston
Totally.
Preston is like appropriately annoying and skeevy, and like he really nails
very
that.
Dick Dastardly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really, really does it quite well. And you need someone like that in a movie like that. You need sort of like, and it would have been fun to play.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like, I don't know if you've been watching Ted Lasso. Do you watch that?
I watched the first season. Chris has watched the whole thing, I think.
Okay, yeah. There's this new character in this new season where they've brought this star player from called Zava, and the guy is so over the top. He's like one of these prima donna sort of soccer players, and is used to earning millions of dollars and all. And I'm just thinking, whenever I watch that, I'm thinking, God, the actor playing this part must be having so much fun.
Oh yeah.
So, and I thought the same with that Preston thing. I was like, the actor must be having a lot of fun playing this part.
Yeah.
So,
I love his scene with
really
Marie Curie where he's underestimating her, and she's basically like, oh no, the Nobel Prize. I like that she had won the year before or whatever, and he keeps thinking that she's not going to know what he's talking about or whatever. I love that.
Right. The other shout out I've got to give with this movie is, the beer company the Preston goes to.
Yeah.
And they're making the beer. And so one of the main characters in there is Jonathan Coleman, who was a radio presenter and TV presenter in Australia at that time, and a bit later on. He's a really funny guy. Sadly passed away last year, I think, or the year before. But he's in this movie as well, if you're interested. Every time I see these movies, especially the ones made in the 80s and 90s, you go, oh, they've been in that and they've been in that and that. And yes, that's quite good. So, yeah. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. And I would recommend pretty much to everyone to have a look at it. And like Micah, if you can get your hands on the soundtrack, I think it's a really good soundtrack.
Definitely.
So definitely worth that. I'm going to go and do the same. Hope we're not going to end up bidding on the same one.
I'll let you have it.
Oh, no, you can have it. It's all right. I'm a nice guy. So are you. So what's going on with you guys? I know you guys have a new podcast. So let's, if you can tell us a bit about that, it'd be great.
I'll let Tad take the lead on this.
So we started a roundtable intersectional feminist podcast where we talk about media, mostly movies right now, but we do want to talk about books and TV shows, but just through a lens of intersectional feminism, and then, focusing on the femme presenting characters and also femme presenting and non-binary directors, filmmakers, writers, maybe even actors, just sort of going full circle where I started with my first podcast, Girls in the Back Row, where we kind of looking at movies as a femme audience and doing that with a bunch of different people. And it's been really fun. We have a great group of people. The show is called The Stiletto Banshees. Kind of came from an in-joke from a listener of Test Pattern, and we sort of branched out from there. We have a very cool logo.
Amazing logo.
It is. It's really good.
Yeah.
The logo is fantastic.
It's been really fun. I think the group that we have is excellent. There's a lot of different lived experiences, so we're getting a lot of different perspectives. We just recorded an episode on the work of Anna Lily Amirpour. So we talked about A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, her second movie, The Bad Batch, and then the episode that she did for Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities called The Outside. And that was so much fun, and we really got to kind of dig into some of the topics in those movies specific to the femme presenting characters in each of those. And we're getting ready to do Carrie, and we're going to sort of talk about all the different iterations of Carrie, including maybe a little bit about the musical.
I will make sure of that because I'm actually a big fan of the musical. I think the musical is great.
Yeah. So
have you seen it?
I haven't. I've seen clips, but I've mainly listened to it.
Right.
Like I think it's really, really fun, like musical theater music.
Yep.
But yeah, so if that interests you, it's, we're taking the sort of analytical side of Test Pattern and really honing and focusing it into one specific topic. And I think we're filling in kind of a hole in the podcasting about movies
Yeah.
lens,
Definitely.
I listened to the first episode. I thought it was really good. It's like a cast of thousands. It's
Yeah.
Thank you.
so many people, so many diverse voices, which is great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's going to be
The panel's pretty
It's going to
great.
be a good listen. Yeah. There's a lot of you. How many was on that first episode? I was trying to.
I think there were 8 people on the first episode.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
got 8 people on the first episode. We've added one more person, and we plan on adding others, but not everybody necessarily will be on every episode. So
Okay.
That's the
we're
design, is
kind of-
this so people can dip
Yeah.
out if they need to, if they maybe don't want to do that topic for whatever reason. There's
Mhm.
enough in our like stable of people that we can, go on without them.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. And where do we find podcasts on socials?
So we're not on Twitter just because Twitter is a dumpster fire now, but we are on Instagram. We post
Yep.
a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff on there. And we're on Spotify because Micah is making playlists for each episode
Yep.
that,
Excellent.
are sort of specific to the episode and also specific to things she's recommending.
Yeah,
She's kind of
highlighting
our-
femme representing or trans non-binary type bands that I think need more attention.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
And then we're also on Letterboxd. So you can find us on Instagram at the Stiletto Banshees. You can find us on Spotify if you search for Stiletto Banshees. And then Letterboxd is letterboxd.com/stiletto banshee. So singular. They just don't give you enough characters to put everything there.
Do you have a website as well?
Yes, we have a website. It's thestilettobanshees.com and very extensive episode notes. You can also download the episodes from there too, in case you don't have a podcast app, although I don't know who doesn't.
Who doesn't these days?
They come on
There's
most
so
phones.
So many. And it's just so hard to keep up. So yeah, it's excellent. So that's your main thing at the moment for both of you?
Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
school, so that's a lot for
Yeah,
me.
I heard
but-
you changed a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a
Excellent.
couple of things I'm working on, but nothing really to announce just yet. But
Okay,
my social is Miss Valentine 138. That's MS Valentine 138 on Instagram. That's mainly my main
yeah.
social media.
Yeah, I was going to say Tab, your
Yeah, I'm on
socials?
Instagram as well with an individual account, Horror Flick Tab. So yeah, you can follow me for sporadic posts about random stuff.
Yeah, same.
Sounds like my main one. I just randomly put stuff occasionally.
If you want to know what I'm listening to, follow me on
Yeah,
Instagram because I share
Micah
it
is
a
a
lot.
very good follow.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both so very much for coming on.
Yeah.
It's been great
Thank you
talking
for
to you
having
again.
us.
I love talking to you both. It's really good, especially about these sort of movies. It's really great, but we might branch out into some other stuff in the future. So
I'd love to.
We always seem to get ones like with you, Micah, we have those movies like we did Strange Behavior
Mm-hmm.
and we had that great musical interlude in the middle. There's always the music bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still think about that song almost every couple of days. I don't know why.
I listen to it regularly. I love that song. Like that's the best part of the movie.
It's great. It is. It's really good. Anyway, so thanks both for coming on.
Yes,
and
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm sure we'll be back in the future. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. Thank you to all my guests who give their time to make this podcast possible, and a special thanks to you for listening. Don't forget you can follow a Dingo Ate My Movie on social media. We're a Dingo Movie on Twitter, Dingo Movie Pod on Facebook and Instagram, and we're on the web at dingomoviepod.com. If you'd like to support the show, leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or share the show with your friends. Of course, you can always buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/dingomoviepod. Once again, thanks for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of A Dingo Ate My Movie.